Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. My name is Rimamnde Shawulu. This is The Other Side. This is a program in which we bring you all sides and other side of the commonly held views. We bring to our analysis critical thinking and common sense for the good of all. Only a few days ago, the Minister for Defense, General Christopher Musa, granted an interview to the British Broadcasting Corporation in which he warned the communities and state governments and local governments which are negotiating with bandits to be careful because those negotiations will bring danger and not safety to the people of those areas. According to General Musa, negotiation with bandits is not a way out. Those people are not real. Whenever they come for reconciliation, they need something.
Bandits can surrender. And when you surrender, you'll be investigated and the normal course taken. And we have seen, I've told communities, if you go in to sign any deal with them, those guys are not honorable people. If they're doing that, it's because probably they're feeling the heat and they just want succor from your end. So people must avoid giving them any chance for them to be, because they will always come off.
To be clear, we do know that several local government areas in Katsina State, for instance, and most probably states such as Zamfara, Kebbi, and even Sokoto, some local authorities, tired of waiting for government, have decided to engage these bandits or kidnappers or terrorists, as you may wish to call them. They hold ceremonies, and in the ceremonies, they ride in their motorcycles with their guns into those meetings. In fact, in one of the meetings, the bandits or the terrorists got to the meeting in a uniform bearing the name tag of a very senior police officer who had been killed by them. And usually the bandits, after the discussions, go back to the bushes with their guns. Of course, in some cases, they release some of the victims that they have kidnapped, and they also allow farmers to go back to their farms. And the bandits freely come into markets to buy the goods that they want from the market and go back to the bushes. At a point, it was reported that at least 20 local government areas in Katsina State had signed such agreements. You would have thought that since the local government areas or councils had arrived at those community-driven resolutions, that banditry will reduce and there will be no more kidnappings. The facts, however, are different. It has become very obvious that rather than abate, in most cases, these attacks have been sustained, the kidnappings have continued, and these bandits have not laid down their arms. And as I warned in one of the videos that I did a few months ago, those bandits are likely to use those areas where the security no longer bother them because of the agreements with the communities as staging centers where they will go to launch attacks on areas that they are yet to subdue. In that way, the probability was that, and may have been proven right, that rather than abate, the peace accords would have given them the room to maneuver and to extend their rule and dominance to areas where they previously did not have those dominance. As a matter of fact, the history of what happened in Syria and Afghanistan show that those peace talks with communities and local authorities, rather than the central authorities, actually provide room for the bandits, the terrorists, or non-state actors to increase in strength and increase their devastation. There are many structural problems with the idea of groups of bandits reaching agreements with local authorities and not the authority that ordinarily in a sovereign state should be the sole owner or possessor of means of violence. One of the strategic problems with this is that it rewards violence. It shows that violence pays. If you have weapons and you refuse to drop the weapons, if you kidnap people and keep kidnapping people, terrorize people, government will talk to you and government will allow you to keep your weapons. When armed groups extract concessions without defeat, violence becomes a profitable bargaining tool. Criminal actors learn that escalation precedes negotiations, so they will necessarily escalate. Of course, new groups emerge, replicating the model that has been successful in getting the attention of government and the local authorities. The result of it is that banditry will increase and will not recede. The second problem with this strategy of groups and local authorities negotiating with violent state actors is that it undermines the sovereignty of the state. The basic interpretation that you will get from that is that the state no longer controls those areas. Implicitly recognizes that armed groups are a parallel government or parallel authorities which must be feared. That is the message that the people at the local levels will have. It also signals that the state cannot enforce law without the consent of these criminals. And it normalizes negotiated governance in ungoverned spaces, meaning simply that government no longer controls the area and that government will have to negotiate with another authority to exact rules in that area. And of course, this accelerates the recession of the Nigerian state, undermines the Nigerian state. And of course, to be clear, the fact that the state does not control all of its space means that the state has fulfilled one of the requirements, which political scientists say is a sign to describe a state as a failed state. Namely, that when a state no longer has sovereignty, sole sovereignty over any of its spaces, it means that that state is failing. It is becoming a failed state. The third point that I need to make is that this action and the empirical evidence that has emerged from Zamfara, Katsina, and Kaduna states show that once ceasefire is announced, there's a brief peace, attacks briefly decline, and then the bandits regroup, they rearm, they expand, and violence resumes, sometimes often at a higher intensity. For the bandits, this is a strategic pause and not reconciliation. It means that the government is losing control. The fourth point is that the negotiations between bandits, between terrorists, between violent non-state actors and local authorities, including state government, destroys public trust and moral order. It destroys the trust in government. It destroys the trust that the government is your protector and has the capability to protect you. Victims in this situation always observe and know that killers walk freely. They are not brought to account. Communities keep paying ransom, sometimes twice, to bandits. And unfortunately, if these communities also pay tax, and of course, relatives of those people will feel very bad that there has been no justice for their relatives that were kidnapped or taken away. This naturally delegitimizes the state. It encourages people in those areas to become vigilantes, to acquire their arms, to find means of protecting themselves. And of course, in some cases, this could also fuel ethnic and communal polarization among the people, depending on the ethnicity and the religion of the bandits. And this creates a very serious problem for the Nigerian state. To be clear, this criminality and jihadist agenda convergence creates problems for those communities. The repeated accommodation of those bandits gives these terrorists, the ISWAP, ISIS, JNIM of the Sahel, to embed themselves in those communities, recruit more young men, spread their ideologies, and this creates recruitment pipelines and criminal networks. Well, my opinion is that peace is a sequence, it's not an event. You cannot wake up one day and have peace. There are correct orders that things must be done. In order to have peace in Nigeria today, government and community leaders will have to do something very seriously about the hate ideology that young people, some as early as 5 years old, have been indoctrinated in. It will be recalled that when Boko Haram was at its height in Maiduguri, there were young boys as young as 10 were killers on behalf of Boko Haram. Young kids were also trying to enforce the ideologies that these groups were preaching. As a matter of fact, I do remember that my landlord in Maiduguri, when I worked there some years ago in the 80s, was shot by a kid of 12 years old because when they sent him to come and collect ransom from him, he did not give the money as at the time that they wanted to give. The young guy felt insulted, pulled out his gun, and shot this man dead. These are kids. And the ideology that these kids are exposed to in those areas where they mix freely with these violent non-state actors clearly tell us what leaders in the Middle East did after Israel was contained was to arrest all the children and the wives of those ISIS commanders and fighters that they could find and camp them where they will not have access to people that they can sell their offensive ideologies to. And if we do allow these bandits, these ISWAP operatives operating as kidnappers, to move freely among young people in the Northwest, it means that we are not yet fighting. If you kill 10 today, 5 or 20 more could be recruited. That is a problem. What needs to be done is that there has to be coercive containment of these bandits. The bandits, these killers and kidnappers must be denied territorial sanctuary. They must be denied access to forests where they dominate. And the military and the government will need to dominate those forests and those areas where they live and give them no room to operate. Their supply chains, the fuel, the food, the arms and motorcycles need to be cut off. Secondly, it does appear that those guys, they are operating in the names of different groups. They now appear to be working together, and that portends greater danger for the people of this country. That if they are allowed to come together, if they keep working together, it will create problems for the Nigerian state. There ought to be engagement with the bandits. This engagement is necessary, and it does happen where you have had conflicts. But these negotiations must include verified disarmament, biometric registration, judicial consequences for grave crimes, and community-based restitution mechanisms. In all the areas where de-radicalization and rehabilitation and reintegration into societies have taken place, they have only succeeded in areas where these groups were militarily defeated. As long as they are not militarily defeated, you cannot guarantee that any sort of person that you are recruiting from among them is not a spy or an agent of those groups wanting to infiltrate the Nigerian security. It's important for government to restore civil governance in the areas where they have succeeded in driving out these bandits or killers. And this is where it's important that the recruitment that is being done by the Nigerian government, as ordered by the president, ought to be more than the number that he has said he would. The only important thing that needs to be done in Nigeria between now and the next 10 years should be security. And that means that we need a surge in security. We need to have more than 1 million military people. We need to have more than 2 million policemen that will be posted to every area, including the civil defense and other paramilitary agencies, so that members of the civil population will have confidence to go back to those areas. And if they go back to those areas with these complements of security, they will need to create police posts, courts, schools, and markets, as well as the provision of facilities that will enable the people to resume normal life. And finally, the bottom line is that making peace with undefeated bandits, killers, or terrorists is not peace building. It is a strategic capitulation. And this is how those bandits in the Northwest are seeing the actions of those state governments and the actions of those local government councils. And this is because when you do that, you are legitimizing their violence, you are eroding the sovereignty of Nigeria, they are helping them to multiply armed groups. You are telling the young people there that it pays to be bandits. Lasting peace requires defeating militarily first and then negotiating later and integrating them into the society from the position of state authority where they will lay down their arms and agree with the norms of society. My name is Rimamnde Shawulu. This is The Other Side. If you've been enjoying our content, I want you to take a look at my book, a collection of articles that I wrote some 20, 30 years ago when I was a reporter with the Standard newspaper in Jos. And the title of this channel, The Other Side, is from this column that I published or I maintained in the Nigerian Standard newspaper, where I wrote about common sense and also brought critical thinking into the affairs of the country. And it will interest you if you read some of the chapters in this book. You realize that some of the problems that we have in Nigeria today are exactly the same problems that we had over 30 years ago. Some of the articles that I wrote, including the economic problems, you can safely remove the names of the previous and former heads of state and the former ministers of finance, and the article will look as if it was written today. If you can't get a copy from any of the bookshops, even though I'm going to put an address where on the description where you can get the book, but you can just head to Amazon, read the book free, or buy a copy from Amazon. Please remember to share our video and to click that subscribe button so that you get notifications without us having to inform you that a new video has been released. My name is Rimamnde Shawulu. This is The Other Side.